at 4 a.m. on a Thursday morning, I was standing in the snow outside the Fox Theater in Salt Lake City downtown. I was one of roughly 2,000 dancers that thought that they could dance. And by 11 a.m., I was dancer number 159 that was standing on a stage with 10 other dancers, and the judges, not like you see on the TV, I didn't get to do my solo then, they played a random piece of music, and they said, next, and then I had to improvise to the random piece of music, and then they would just say next, and next, and next. And I was doing all my best jumps and turns. I don't love improvising. I like to plan. I'm a planner. Any other planners in the room? But I just had this thought, just turn and flash the judges a smile. And so I did. And there was a judge waving a golden ticket. And I was like taken aback because the previous rounds, they waited till all 10 dancers were done improvising to the random piece of music to hand out the golden tickets. The next day, I was standing in the theater lobby, and I was looking around the room at the other dancers that I had witnessed the day before. And some of the dancers I remember were amazing, like really good dancers. And the other dancers in the room, shall we say, not so amazing dancers. And I'm pretty intelligent, and I was putting things together, and I was like, they were weeding out the middle the day before. They kept the best and the worst dancers from the previous day. Remember, they're making a TV show. And I thought to myself, which one am I? Which one am I? I'll pause my story for a minute. Have you ever found yourself in a room you earned your way into, yet you still wondered if you belonged? Anybody? That's how powerful the inner critic can be. At that point in my life, I had trained since I was 5 years old. I was 28 years old, and I had danced professionally with companies in Chicago, Colorado, Utah, Beijing, China. And here I was, standing in this lobby, wondering, which one am I? I've since named that part of myself, that inner critic, Brandy. So I'm Brittany. My ego's Brandy. Brandy with an I with a heart over the I. And she's trying to keep me safe. But unfortunately, she's kept me small a lot of my life. And she's kept me small in my creativity. She's stolen opportunities from me, the times that I've let her take the lead. And I have to be grateful for her too, because if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be standing in front of this room with all of you today. So the inner critic is the part of ourself that is desperately trying to help us, but maybe operating on outdated programming, that programming that happens when we were children, right? I was a person that would appease to stay safe. Some kids learn to fight back to stay safe. Some kids learn to run and hide when there's not actually danger in the room. The only danger really is like being liked or not liked. I'm here to invite you to update the operating system, to realize what's running the show so that you can actually change it. When we don't realize what's running the show, when I don't realize that Brandy is in charge, right? We're like in the ditch, right? She's driving us all over the place. But when my wise adult higher self, Brittany, can take the lead, things are much likely to go better. Egotistical is what I call Brandy. She's my ego. When you think of the word egotistical, what typically comes to mind? For me, I get a picture of a frat boy in a polo shirt with a collar popped. I don't know why. But that's what I picture. I think self-absorbed, I think arrogant, right? And literally that's what Google AI says, arrogant, self-absorbed. But for me, when Brandy's in charge, there are times, like when I'm driving to teach a yoga class, Brandy's like, what wisdom are you going to bestow upon them today? And then I'm like, Brandy, we're not going to bestow anything. We're going to simply share of our experience and have a theme of things that we're working through. But often she has me feeling less than. She has me shrinking. She has me feeling like I don't belong. She has me feeling, the opposite of arrogant. It's a different sort of self-absorbed. In my book, I talk about the ego as any time I'm being inflated or deflated by that part of myself that is trying to take control to keep me safe. I want you to know that being egotistical doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It simply means that you're human. And I love that there's so much science that we can connect these tools to. Back, 10,000 years ago, the yogis called the ego ahamkara. Freud coined the id, the ego, and the superego. Modern psychology calls it the inner critic or parts work, one of the parts in parts work. Either way, it doesn't matter what we call it. Essentially, it is our brain, a very specific part of our brain trying to help us. First, information comes into our brain through our eyes, our ears, our sound, and it goes to the thalamus. The thalamus, we can think of it like the security guard in the brain. And it comes into the brain, and we think, and the thalamus says, information go. And first, it sends at the same time, the information goes to the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. But it gets to the amygdala first. You're all familiar with the amygdala? It's the lizard part of our brain. It's the fight, flight, freeze, appease part of our brain. So I got a little stick over there on the bottom left of the image. The information comes in through our eyes to the thalamus. The thalamus sends the information out. It gets to the amygdala first. The amygdala is like, a snake. Heart's racing. Breath gets fast. And then the information gets to the prefrontal cortex, and it's like, oh, wait, that's just a stick. Phew. Right? And it's just so funny that it happens so fast and yet so slow at the same time. And then once the prefrontal cortex realizes that it's a stick, not a snake, it says, like there's that immediate like, whew. And then another, I gotta take a deep breath to calm down. And that's essentially the prefrontal cortex turning the amygdala off. Calm down. What's really interesting is once the amygdala has hijacked our system, like truly the instances where you get the email and then it's like, and you get yourself into a tizzy. Am I alone in that? Like the emails just really trigger me. It takes on average 20 minutes to calm the amygdala down if you are being intentional about calming it down. It takes 20 minutes, science shows, 20 minutes of conscious breathing to get the prefrontal cortex fully back online after the amygdala has taken over your nervous system. So how much of my day do I spend not calming myself down, just moving from one fire to the next, when there are actually no lions and tigers in the room? So I have summarized all of the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, how it works, lizard brain and wizard brain. So the lizard brain, the amygdala is not quite the reptilian part of the brain, but it's the part of the brain that develops next in human evolution. So we'll just call it the lizard brain. And like I said a moment ago, I named my ego Brandy. So if you have a pet lizard, you can name your lizard brain, whatever you want to name it. That's essentially the title of my book, Dancing with Ourselves, like Brandy and Brittany, learning how to dance with the two parts of ourselves so that we can live on purpose. So I know Brandy's in charge, my lizard brain is in charge when I feel tight in the chest, when my breath is shallow, when I have racing thoughts, and when I feel reactive, like the, ooh, better watch out, like the snap thing that happens. I snap at my children. It's like, oh, take a deep breath. And I know my wizard brain, my higher self, is in charge. When I feel calm, my shoulders are relaxed, I can breathe deeply, my mind is calm, and I can intentionally respond instead of react. Your lizard brain is trying to keep you safe, but it's keeping you small and keeping you stressed. I don't know if anybody relates to feeling tightness in the chest or tightness in the tummy, just at random moments. It's like, why do I feel this way? And likely it makes sense that you do, because your ego is doing battles for you that you don't even realize. And it's okay. Resisting it only makes it worse. So if you should on yourself, you're like, I should know better, pun intended, I shouldn't have done that, then you're just going to make it worse. I call it a shame spiral. Down, 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 down. The good news and the bad news is that the amygdala isn't going anywhere. Yeah, it's great that we have it. It keeps us safe in times that we actually need to be safe and there is danger. But the bad news is that it's trying to keep us safe when we don't need it to keep us safe. So you can't outperform the ego, but you can learn to work with it. And that's my invitation to you today. I'm going to leave you with a tool that you can take into any moment, or you can pause, name, and choose. Pause. In the pause is where it's like I notice the nervous system activated, so I can pause and intentionally take a deep breath. And then I can name how I'm feeling. Physically, I'm feeling tightness in my chest. I'm feeling shallow breathing. Mentally, I feel swirly thoughts. Emotionally, I feel sad, angry, insert feeling. And then I can choose. From there, I can choose to continue to react, or I can choose to take action. I can choose to give myself an empowered statement. I'll give you an example. Who's taken a yoga class before? Oh, quite a few. Awesome. Have you ever done toes pose? That picture on the right with the orange pants? Also commonly called screaming toes pose. Screaming toes pose. This was, in the picture on the right is at my third yoga teacher training when I was training to become a yoga teacher. There were 100 people in the room and our mats were like 6 inches apart. And on the second day, the facilitator said, I'm gonna have you take toes pose for 10 minutes. Yeah. And instantly he was like, and notice how your body reacted just by me saying that. The lizard brain had already taken over. And then within 30 seconds of being in the pose, he had us have our journals, and we journaled. He's like, you can come out momentarily to journal and then come back in. My journal listed, you don't understand, insert swear word, this isn't fair, what's the point, this is stupid, you don't understand, insert swear word, lots of swear words. And later he invited us to pull out that list. He's like, this is your list of red flags for yourself. This is your list of any time you feel out of control in a situation that you would like to be in control of, these are your clues. So often we skip over the tight chest, the shallow breathing, and we just bulldoze through the day. You know, I'm in a room full of successful women, and likely we have pushed through, we have shoved down, we have, get it done, right? And I know for me, that left me with a lot of health issues because of all of the stress that I let Brandy hold me in for most of my life. But I've used that pause, name, and choose to shift. So a week after this training, I'm back at my studio in Lakewood, and it's in between the morning classes and the afternoon classes, and I'm just getting some work done. And I check my email, and the subject to the email was cancel my membership in all caps. And instantly, stomach dropped, my jaw clenched, and I heard myself say, you've got to be freaking kidding me. You don't understand. I'm trying to run a business here. All I did was change the class from 4 p.m. to 4:30 p.m., and this longtime member was out the door. And because of that exercise the week before, I had the clue because I heard myself say, you don't understand, insert swear word, right? That I was able to pause, name, and choose. I paused, I took a deep breath. I named how I was feeling, the situation in my body, in my head. And I got present to that I was sad. I was able to name I felt sad, and I was able to label the limiting belief that was showing up, that I didn't matter and that what I was creating didn't matter. We don't have time to go into limiting beliefs today, but it's a big part of my work. But I was able to then shift and name. Right now, the story I give up is that what I'm creating doesn't matter. And I create myself as capable and creating something that matters. And that simple statement was able to shift me out of, and I could respond to the email from my higher self instead of react and let Brandy type an email for me. You can imagine what that email would look like. Well, I should take that back. She's like sickly sweet, like she will kill you with kindness, kind of. You know, the ego, again, not self-absorbed and not necessarily, when I react, I'm not a reactor that's like, I'm gonna yell at you. I'm a reactor that I will silence you in a way, you know? That's what Brandy does. But I know that it's Brandy now instead of thinking that it's like who I am as a human, right? So learning to recognize the ego statements as red flags instead of reacting, you can practice pausing, naming, and choosing. And I'd like you to think about how long Have you been doing something the same way? It creates habits, right? I love this image of a hike out in Evergreen. And it's the reason this path is here, this trail is here, because animals and humans have walked this path over and over again. If we stopped walking that path, then this path would grow over, and likely a new path would form because we'd go a different way. That's how our brain works. When I showed you the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, the brain does go to the amygdala first, but we can learn to reroute it sooner. Dr. Rick Hansen, he's a psychologist, wrote, "What flows through the mind sculpts the brain." And we can actually reshape the brain. There's a map of the Mississippi River, and a cartographer took all of the routes that the Mississippi River ever took over time and layered them on top of each other, and they're not the same route. I love it as a visual representation that we can actually choose. Like if a river can choose to go a new whole way that's like in a different state, as we've labeled states, then we can pause, name, and choose and create new neurological pathways for ourselves. And it's called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and rewire itself. Every thought you think and every action you take is shaping your brain. Every thought you think and every action you take is shaping your brain. So let's be intentional about it. Every time you pause, name, and choose, you're reinforcing a new pattern. And the ego can keep us stuck. It can hijack our nervous system, our communication, and our relationships. Whether it's a coworker, your children, your partner, they say the thing, and then you're instantly triggered, and you say the thing or think the thing. That's your clue. Those are your red flags to then shift the energy. And I do want to say before I wrap up, the ego shows up, Brandy shows up more often when I'm tired, when I'm hungry, when I'm overstimulated, when I haven't moved my body. And she shows up more often when I'm doing something that I'm not very good at. I have less experience at. So I am 46 years old. I have a 3-year-old daughter. So I've spent the last 3 years postpartum and perimenopausal at the same time. And so I've spent a lot of time tired, hungry, overstimulated. I also have an 8-year-old son who is crazy. So Brandy has been real close by a lot these last 3 years especially. But I've learned to harness her, to pause, name, and usually I've been naming what it is that she is needing right now, whether it's a snack or a hug or a kiss. And it's like, oh, I speak to her like I did when Isaac was 4. And I'd be like, it makes sense that you want a hug. Yes, let's have a hug. Or, yeah, instead of being passive aggressive, just ask your husband for a hug, right? But what's interesting that I've noticed in these last 3 years of being tired, hungry, overstimulated, and feeling inadequate as a parent, because the children, oh, there's the time. It's not the full time. That's my 5-minute warning. Instead of, what was I just saying? Brandy. Yeah. What does she need? Thank you. So I got it. Yes. Even though I feel less competent at parenting because the children are changing every day, and Brandy's like, you should be doing better. When I show up to teach a yoga class, it doesn't matter how tired. My child can be getting a tooth all night long, new tooth. I can lead a yoga teacher training, no problem. As my higher self, because I feel competent in that area. So I can be rested, I can be fed, and yet show up to parenting and still have a harder time and have Brandy trying to help more of the time. But no matter what, when I'm teaching yoga, we're good to go because I feel competent. So things to keep in mind and give yourself grace for. If you're like, why am I being so egotistical right now? It's because you're tired, because you need a snack, because you need a break. So the invitation is to pause, name, and choose to change the conversation in your head, to get out of your way and live on purpose. Thank you all so much for listening. We have about 3 minutes left, so if anybody has a question about the ego, the nervous system, how I named Brandy.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing in Denver coming up?
Ooh, thank you for asking. September 11th through 13th, I rented out Chatfield Botanic Gardens in Littleton, so not too far from here, for a 3-day yoga event. So I have found that too many people feel like they don't quite belong in yoga spaces. They won't even let themselves go into yoga spaces because they feel like I'm not bendy enough, or my body is this shape and it doesn't look like all the skinny white ladies in the class, or, right? And it's just, that's a problem to me. And it's also a problem to me that most people think that yoga is shapes that you make on the mat, which it is that. That's one of the 8 limbs of yoga. There's 7 other limbs of yoga that include breath work, that include meditation, that include self-reflection. So the Denver Yoga Summit is a weekend where you can come no matter whether you've stepped foot on a yoga mat. You don't even have to step foot on a yoga mat that weekend, and you can hear keynote speakers and take workshops and learn about your energetic anatomy and your physical anatomy. And then if you'll pull back up that last slide, there's a QR code there if you want the notes from my talk today. You just fill out a little survey saying that you loved everything I said first, and then for Brandy's sake. No, but if you do have feedback, Brandy will be fine if you have feedback for me. And then it'll redirect you to my website that has the notes from today's talk. So, she's holding up my book. So Dancing with Ourselves, A Practical Guide to Harness the Ego was a #1 new release a year ago, March, so it's 1 year old. And it's on Audible as well as Kindle, so if you're not a physical reader, and there's a companion workbook on my website too. So if you want to name your ego, if you want to learn about your limiting beliefs, learn how to rewire yourself, learn how to meditate, it's full of tools and embarrassing stories about me and Brandy. Thank you so much.
Once you learn to dance with Brittany.
Yeah, did you all hear the question? Once you are able to pause, name, and choose how to dance with Brandy, what's the potential? So at first it'll be like, oh, I see the train coming, but you can't necessarily get out of the way yet. But then with more practice, it's like, I see the train coming, and I can step out of the way. And then eventually, it depends on the area. But again, if I'm tired, overwhelmed, hungry, like Brandy's still gonna show up, but I can interrupt it faster. And it's really helpful to have people in your life that know the tools too. My husband is Adam, his ego is Alex. We don't talk about Alex. But it's helpful to know, oh, Alex and Brandy, whoo. Alex is like Stonewall. Brandy's like, please don't leave me. And it's hilarious once you see it. So the potential is not that it's gonna go away. You can't fire the inner critic. The amygdala is not going anywhere. It's a part of our biology, but you can stop it sooner.
Positively, or how you approach your relationship with your ego in a new situation?
Yeah, Brandy's trying to help me. She's trying to make sure that I am okay. Whether, like, she helps me, she's the part of me that will show up and compliment somebody's shirt because it creates connection. Like, she knows how to crack the joke at the right time to break the ice. So now it's like learning, like, oh, she is trying to help me. She's letting me know that I need a hug, just that she goes about it like a 4-year-old would. And so it's like, okay, I see that you want a hug right now. Take a deep breath and ask for the hug. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So did everybody in here, if you learned something valuable that you walked out today with and you can implement in your life, raise your hand. Yeah, that was fabulous.
Yay.
That was
Thank you.
fabulous. Thank you for
Thank
writing
you.
down.
Thank you. Thank you.